Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. The title of this video is What Level Soul Are You? Before we get into the body of the video though, I want to thank my newest patron, Ahmed Ali. Has chosen to support the Astral Club at the Astral Ascended level. So thank you very much, Ahmed Ali. It's very, very much appreciated. And if anyone else feels moved to contribute to Astral Club, the link will be in the description. Next, I want to thank everyone and wish them a happy Thanksgiving. This is a very interesting holiday. It's normally one where family comes from all over and gets together and has a meal. This year, my wife and I won't be doing that because of the various travel recommendations and restrictions, and we have my parents are still alive, and they're in their 80s, and we just thought that it would be too risky to get together with this current plague going on. In addition, my lovely physician's assistant daughter is right in the thick of it, and please pray for her. She's working very hard, and and the other day she saw 40 COVID patients who she had to test for COVID, and she told me 35 of them were symptomatic. So please pray for her. Her name is Rose, and I would appreciate that if you are so moved to do so. But this holiday, regardless of whether you're Zooming for this holiday or whether you're actually there in person, and if you do choose to be there in person, please be safe, wear a mask, and be very safe. But this holiday, no matter where you are, it's about family. And it's about being grateful for what you have. And when we say that, we usually think right away, well, what I have. Well, I've got this car, I've got this house or apartment, or I've got all these other possessions. But what do we really have? I mean, what's really ours? What will we take with us after we pass from this lifetime? We're not going to take that house. We're not going to take all that money. We're not going to take any of that stuff. That's left behind. Instead, what we take with us is the love of our family and that appreciation that we have for one another. All this reminds me, recently I was asked for advice by an 18-year-old young man. He asked me for life advice. At first, I was like, "Wow, that's I don't know if I'm qualified to be offering or answering a question like that. I'm an astral projection guy." But I thought about it for a while, and I responded to him. I said, "Use whatever talents you may possess to help others. Value your family above all else. Anything further you accomplish in life after those two important things will just be icing on the proverbial cake." And I believe that. I believe that to my core. So as you're digging into the turkey, whether you're physically with your family or maybe you're doing a Zoom call or on the phone or what have you, please try to keep what's important in your mind and in your heart. Okay, well, let's get started now with the video. Now, I've met a lot of different souls, and I'll tell you about some of my experiences encountering a variety of souls on the astral plane. And there's many ways to break down the various levels. And There's numerous books and teachers who, going back thousands of years, have their own way to break it down. Mine is nothing special. It's just a basic level that I'm comfortable with. I break it down into novice, mature, and then adept. Now, before we get into, we'll start with novice. I want to be very clear that when I say a novice soul, in other words, someone who is young and inexperienced, there's a reason why I chose novice, for instance. It means someone who is newer to an experience. It doesn't mean they're lower. It doesn't mean they're lesser. It just means they're newer. That's all. For instance, you know how I like referring to the physical. A PhD student in astrophysics or mathematics is certainly more accomplished, more advanced, more intelligent than a first grader. However, once upon a time, that PhD student wasn't doing calculus for fun. He was trying to figure out how to tie his shoes, and he was confused as to what was red and what was the color orange. So what I'm saying here is that we don't look down upon people who might be a novice or the other levels, because we were once there ourselves. And it's a progression that all souls must go through. So there's nothing wrong, there's nothing inherently lesser about being a younger soul. It just means you've got your whole life track ahead of you. And you've got a lot of lessons to learn. But there's nothing wrong with that, any more than there's anything wrong with that first grader, because he's a first grader. He's got a place to go. He's going to learn. He's going to get to where he's destined to go. And that PhD student has no cause to look down upon him. Okay, so the levels I like to break it up into is novice, mature, and then adept. I try to choose words like that because they tend not to have a lot of negative connotations associated with them. Mature is just that. It's mature. It means you've had experience under your belt. Adept simply means that you have reached a level where you are extremely capable. You have learned all the lessons, and you are now extremely capable of mastering tasks or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, and that you are now in a position to assist others who require that assistance. But let's go back to the novice. I visited years ago. I was flying around in the sky, and I decided, rather than just enjoying myself doing a throwaway astral projection, I decided to find out where souls were born. I had a moment of unconsciousness, and I found myself, it's very difficult to describe, but it was like a stellar nursery. There was these light balls of light everywhere, billions and billions of them. And then there was entities, beings that were molding them, taking this light and molding it and pouring energy into them and caressing them. And I could feel the tremendous warmth that was just coming off of all these beings who I thought of as some sort of astral nursemaids. I approached one of them, and they were a bit startled at first to see me, but I asked for permission, and I projected as much love and light as I possibly could. And I just asked if I could ask a question or two, and they said yes. I said, "Are you creating these souls? Are you molding them?" And The answer I got was that the energy was created at the moment of the universe. What they were doing was taking this raw soul energy, if you will, and molding it and pouring energy into it in such a way that it was evolving. Each one of these little balls was evolving in front of my eyes. And essentially what they were doing was helping to create this self-aware soul. I mean, this energy was there, but it wasn't quite, it hadn't quite coalesced into a coherent soul matrix. And that once that was done, then you had this self-aware entity. So the energy was there, but it needed to be put together into some sort of a matrix so that it could be born, if you will. And then I asked where these souls were going. And the vision I got was amazing. I had visions of millions of worlds. And I saw the images all at once, and I was like, whoa, 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 let's scale this back a little bit, because if you could imagine not seeing a million television screens, but being on a million worlds all at once, then you can basically imagine just the amount of stimulus that was pouring into my consciousness. So they dialed it back as soon as I said that. And I recalled one of the worlds that they saw was one that I had incarnated in a long time ago. And I talked about that in a video quite a while back, where I had incarnated when I was in perhaps the novice stage. And it was a planet where there was these intelligent, self-aware, large insect-type creatures. And they were preyed upon by these huge spider-like predators. And I learned family and togetherness from a tribal standpoint back then. It was a short lifetime, but that's what I learned there. Anyway, these young souls were being sent everywhere, including Earth. And so I tried to take all of that in. Next, I asked these solar nursery people, what lessons these young novice spirits needed to learn. And they told me that they needed to learn that, of course, togetherness and family and selflessness, and to love not only themselves, but to love others more than they love themselves. There was a lot more to the lesson than that, but that was the gist that I remembered when I returned to my body. So, what is a novice soul? How can you recognize a novice soul? And remember, we've all been there, okay? So no judgment. But they tend to be like, once again, let's refer to the physical. They tend to be like young children. They're very curious. They're very innocent. But they typically have a number of emotions that need to be worked on. For instance, they can be envious. If you want a child to play with a toy that they're ignoring, have another child play with that toy. And before you know it, that's the most desirable toy in the world. They can be materialistic. Novice souls need to be materialistic. Let me put it to you that way. Because they need to learn these material lessons. So it's a necessary stage. It's a stage you have to evolve beyond, but it's necessary. So they're very much interested in the here and now. They don't typically think about or even remember anything about the spiritual. They're not concerned with that. They're concerned with where they are now, what they're experiencing right now. Is their belly full? Do they have sufficient clothing? And when you get to the Western world, they want to know that they have the best toys and all that other kind of stuff. They can be jealous. They can be mischievous. And they can also blame others for their own failings. Now, as I said before, these are typical emotions of the young, of the novices. So this is a stage they have to go through. In order to understand the light, you have to experience the darkness, or else you can't tell the difference. You have to understand lack of before you can understand and go beyond that and realize there's more to existence than just the material. So these are the young souls. These are the novice ones. And my information was, when I asked, this was another experience, when I asked, how did these souls break down currently on Earth? They said that the majority of the souls on Earth were novices. I didn't like to hear that, but that's what they told me. So let's say around 60-70% are novices. Then they said you're dealing with basically 25 or so percent, which is the next category, which we will call mature. When we get to the mature soul, we are now dealing with a soul that has a plan before it reincarnates. It's gone through all the beginning stages. It's met its material needs, and it's dealt with envy and jealousy and prejudice and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And it's passed a variety of these tests. It's now in a position. When it was a novice, it hopped into whatever body was available without any regard as to ideal parents or what have you. With the mature soul, they tend to reincarnate a little bit less often because now they're trying to pick their moment. Now they have a reason for reincarnation. They have associates who are advanced enough to pick their reincarnation. And so they'll get together in a school in between lives, and they'll work with their guides. They'll find out how they did last time, and they'll plan what they're going to do in this next life. So when they do reincarnate, they have a plan. They have a whole thing put together where they're going to accomplish X, Y, and Z. So they've thought this through, and they reincarnate. Now, does this mean that everything's going to go smoothly and according to plan? Not necessarily. In many cases, the soul is in a situation where it had a problem with a previous soul. And maybe there was disagreement, a falling out, maybe there was even violence. And now that they've matured, they want to work through that. So that's one of the reasons why even a mature soul sometimes ends up in a situation where they're with parents or they're in a family situation which on the surface does not appear to be ideal. And from our physical standpoint, we say to ourselves, oh, that poor person, they've been afflicted with this particular situation. And there's nothing wrong with sympathy, and there's nothing wrong with assisting that person, okay? Nothing wrong at all. But if they're mature, if they're a mature soul, they have chosen that. They have given their assent. And let me answer the next question you might have. And I feel I was very lucky, Okay, I had and have a loving family. I can't ask for anything more. Great parents, but and there are people who have suffered and they didn't deserve to suffer. And from a physical standpoint, we there's no excuse ever to abuse another soul. But on some level, that experience needed to happen, and it feels awful. But there was some sort of a lesson that needed to be learned. And hopefully, what happened was those two souls that had that disagreement and maybe even got involved in violence learned to move past that, learn to put together a relationship with one another where there was at least one of mutual respect, if it wasn't one of love. But that's, that does happen. But in many cases, mature souls pick parents or a situation or siblings that will assist them in accomplishing the goals of their lifetime. For instance, there are mature souls that will incarnate in a tribe in the Amazon. It happens. But much more often, they'll have novice souls happening there because the experience itself, by its very nature, is somewhat limited. So if you really want to experience a maturing type of situation, our more advanced societies today offer more options in achieving that evolution that you seek. Once again, I'm not putting any value judgments on those Amazon tribal people. I mean, they might have established a tribal system that has lasted for thousands of years. You can't take anything away from that. But they needed a situation where they could more easily evolve. And in our modern societies, there's a million different things that you could do, for instance, to help others and to evolve in a professional situation. Whereas in an Amazonian tribe, you're very limited as to what options you have. I mean, you could be a medicine man or a hunter as a male. So, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's somewhat limiting. So the mature plans their life, they incarnate, and they go through these lessons with their fellow souls. And like I said, typically at this point in time, you're going to recognize, at least on a subconscious level, souls that you've just been with before. As a mature soul, you meet these people, and it happens time and again, and you just instantly feel at home with them, you feel comfortable with them, and you just feel that somehow, have I known you before? I mean, have we met before? And you haven't, not in this lifetime, but you just feel so at home, so comfortable. So that is quite a common thing in a mature lifetime. Now, are there problems that are associated with maturing soul? Yes, maturing souls can still be a little self-involved. They can be all about, well, I'm working on myself now. And our society, it's advanced, but it could still be a little bit of a navel staring type of society where it's like, oh, I'm working on myself, I'm trying to improve myself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But mature souls can get so wrapped up in their own life lessons that they forget that it's also important to assist those around them, and perhaps even more important, to assist those around them and to realize that we are all one and that we all rise or we all fall together. And that takes me to the next stage, which is, as I said, the adept. This is a soul that at this point in time probably has had thousands of lifetimes. and it now has a very close relationship with a number of other souls. It is very close to its own guide or guides, or it actually has become a guide now. And it's generally faced, depending on exactly what level we're at here, it can be faced with a situation where it's given a choice. You can proceed on to the next level of spiritual evolution. You can go to the next subplane or plane above this one. Or you can choose to make a great sacrifice and go back into the physical lifetime to work with others, to assist others. And that's where you get people like the Dalai Lama, for instance, people who are extremely advanced and who seem to be almost another species, who are completely devoted, and their mission is to assist others. They feel that is their core goal. They don't feel higher. They don't feel above their fellow souls, because if they do, chances are they're not really an adept. Instead, they feel that these are brothers and sisters, perhaps brothers of another mother, for instance, and that they owe it to these other fellow souls, that instead of allowing themselves to go forward, they will go back onto the physical plane and they will assist these other souls in improving their situation, in evolving and going forward. And this, this is a very important stage. I would say that most likely there's no more than a few percent of those folks on this particular earth right now. But it's interesting, even though they're very few, they can have a very powerful impact. Now, you don't always know their names. They're not always famous. As a matter of fact, I'll bet you 99.99% are names that you've never heard and you never will hear. You hear the Dalai Lama, that's the exception. But for the most part, they're people who work quietly. They work silently. Yes, they have families. They have problems. They're not perfect, okay? We're not talking about gods here. We're talking about souls who've just learned a lot of lessons over thousands of lifetimes. And they're now in a situation where, okay, they've got that PhD. They worked hard. I mean, once upon a time, they couldn't tie their shoelaces. But now they've earned that PhD. They can do that astral calculus now. And so they feel it's necessary to help others to get to that point. And that kind of ties it all back to me with the recommendation, the advice that I gave that young man. And it's whether, now, if you're listening to this video, chances are you're a mature or an adept. Congratulations. You wouldn't be interested in astral projection if you weren't in one of those two categories. That's just all there is to it. But remember what's important in your life. And on Thanksgiving especially, it's family. And greater than that is our human family, and that not only is our individual biological family our responsibility, it's our human family that's our responsibility. And it's our jobs to assist them to do better than they've done in the past, and to realize that we're all one and we're all together, and we either rise or we fall together. Well, that was this particular video. Yeah, you said he wanted something a little bit longer, So this is a little bit longer. So don't yell at me if it was too long. I want to thank everyone for your time and your attention. As I said, once again, if you're interested in donating to the channel, there'll be a link in the description for the Astral Club Patreon site. And anything that you could give certainly would be appreciated. If you like this, please hit that like button. Share it with those of like minds. If you subscribe, great, thank you. I appreciate it. If not, hey, hit the subscribe button. You know, it feels fun when you do it. And hit the bell. That way you'll always hear whenever I post a new video. And please, questions and comments. I love that stuff. And I know all the other Astral Club members love reading the questions and comments as well. Well, I'm Rick. Happy Thanksgiving. And I will see you on the astral plane.